Welcome back to A to Z here on Locked On Sports Atlanta, free on YouTube and wherever you get your podcasts. Search Locked On Sports Atlanta. Check out the entire Locked On Sports Atlanta network. It's A to Z. That's this show, Hitting Hard with John Chuckery, ATL Day Ones, Jarvis Davis, and Tanitra Batiste. Don't forget about our Braves postcast. It's been awesome after these first two games in the series against the Mets. Make sure you follow in this final game today. And, of course, Locked On Falcons and Locked On Hawks. Okay, now, there was a rumor floating out yesterday, most of it circulating around the city of Cleveland, that the punishment for DeShaun Watson may come down and may be 4 to 6 games for him. Okay. And on the surface, that seems light. And I've said this repeatedly about the whole thing, that the NFL has to do this tough balancing act. I shouldn't even call it, it's a self-inflicted tough balancing act, but they have to do this balancing act about optics versus what may play out in the legal system versus what is fair versus what is consistent with what they've done. And the NFL has shown no consistency when it comes to violence against women or sexual crimes, sexual assault crimes against women. They've shown no consistency whatsoever, other than repeatedly they are telling you they don't really give a rip about women. And I know that they make up about 47% of their audience, but they genuinely don't care. They have no desire to get into the game of making a hardline stance against violence against women, because if they did, they would be throwing the book at every single one of the players in the league who does something, and they don't. So from that standpoint, they still have to handle this thing with DeShaun Watson and figure out, what seems appropriate. Just again, for some framing, remember Ben Roethlisberger got 6 games. He was never charged. Ezekiel Elliott got 6 games. He was never charged. So you're at this precedent here where DeShaun Watson has never been charged with a crime, despite what's going on in a civil court. He's never been charged with a crime. What is the appropriate punishment? And we read reports that, it was up to a year that the NFL was asking for, and the NFLPA was asking for 0 games, this, that, and the other. Okay, where I go with all this as it pertains to the Falcons, if he gets 6 games, 1, I think it's light. 2, I think the optics are terrible. But 3, measure it up against some of the other punishments. And Calvin Ridley got a year suspension for betting while on injured reserve, doing mobile gambling while on injured reserve, betting on the NFL. And DeShaun Watson, who has been has been accused of alleged crimes of sexual misconduct against 22, 4, 60, whatever it is, different women. Does that seem like any of that is fair? You have one guy who went on his phone and went, okay, Jacksonville +6, $50, send. And the other guy who deliberately messaged women, had sexual relations with these women. Some of them felt that it was inappropriate. Just think of the litany. Go read any of the stories out there written about what DeShaun Watson was asserted or alleged to have done. And you're sitting here going, a year for placing a bet and 6 games for all that. Now, as much as grossly on the surface that seems unfair and unequitable, there is a certain amount of there's a large difference in these crimes. Okay, there is, and you can't underscore that. And I want to dive into it here in a second, but first a word from our friends at BlueNile.com. You can celebrate all of life's special moments, from creating custom engagement ring of your dreams to gifting a classic and timeless jewelry piece at all at prices that you won't find at a traditional jeweler. There are 2 parts to the business wedding jewelry and everyday fine jewelry. There's 2 different parts of this business, and one is wedding jewelry, the other one's fine jewelry. And you need to understand the difference between the 2, and BlueNile.com is a great place to go. So whether you're ready to pop the question or whether you're celebrating this milestone moment, find a jeweler as unique as her with the modern convenience of online shopping at BlueNile.com. They have simple online tools that let you choose the diamond shape, size, and clarity, as well as the setting style. Blue Nile's bench jewelers will then handcraft a perfect engagement ring. Each one is one of a kind. Or, they can make that memorable gift for that perfect situation, perfect moment. Make that moment sparkle with jewelry from BlueNile.com. And Locked On Sports listeners get $50 off purchases of $500 or more. This podcast exclusive engagement. Use the code Locked On. That's code Locked On. Plus, every order is insured, ships free, and arrives in discreet packaging that won't give away what's inside. Shop stress-free and find your forever piece. Go to BlueNile.com today. There's a huge difference between what Calvin Ridley did and what DeShaun Watson did. And the difference simply is this. Calvin Ridley's is an integrity of the game issue. If you remember the movie The Longest Yard, the newer version with Chris Rock and Adam Sandler and all the NFL players and Nelly, Mike Earl Overton's in it and everything else, and Goldberg. There's a scene where, and you have to go back and look for this, but there's a scene where the guy Paul Cruz, played by Adam Sandler, first gets to jail and he meets Chris Rock, his name is caretaker in there inside, and he shakes his hand and he looks at him and he goes, "Point shaving?" And he says something to the effect of, he goes, "You could have threw your mama down the steps. You could have hurt animals. You could have done a whole bunch of other stuff, but point shaving, that's just un-American, man." And so that's the general sentiment, that point shaving and gambling and doing anything to affect that part of the game of things that go on the field is completely never going to be okay. And you'll always be ostracized. If you mess with the integrity of what goes on the field, there is no greater crime in the eyes of management, because that product on the field is what is the golden egg, right? That's the golden goose that laid the golden egg. That product on the field is what we all forget all the other crap for. It's why we can forget deflated balls and hitting women and a whole bunch of other things, and drunk driving and PED failure tests. We can forget all those things. But if you mess with the product on the field, you will never get a pass. And some would say you should never get a pass. Now, I genuinely think, as someone who's an avid sports gambler and someone a big proponent of sports gambling, that as long as you don't bet on your league, and that Calvin Ridley did, I would just say, just don't bet on. You can bet on, if you're a football player, bet on baseball, tennis, golf, basketball, whatever you want. I mean, go ahead and gamble. It's fine. It's not a sin, despite what people in the state of Georgia will tell you. I think that's totally fine. I just think it's clear. It's a bad decision if you want to gamble to do it on the sport of the NFL, right? Because there's just no way, even if you don't play for that team, it's not like you can't be friends with somebody on another team and have information. It's a bad look all around. There's no way to keep it clean. But still, gambling itself should not be anything that prohibits you from this scarlet letter that Calvin Ridley now has to wear. But he did bet on football, and he admitted it. So that's the real difference. And as much as DeShaun Watson, in my mind, deserves to be punished for at least a year, you can't really compare the two crimes, and you shouldn't. Coming up next, we will wrap things up here on A to Z, hand out a shovel of wisdom, and get you guys out of here. Ready for the Braves Mets game coming up later today. It's A to Z right here on Locked On Sports Atlanta, free on YouTube, and wherever you get your podcast, search Locked On Sports Atlanta. Be right back.